Hello, everybody. I hope you guys are having a good summer vacation season so far. And in line with summer vacation, I'm making the July live stream um, the, about travel and particularly international travel. Uh, because of the Analyzing Finance with Nick tour, I've been really fortunate to travel across the country and meet a lot of you guys in person. And by doing that, I've kind of learned a lot of new experiences about America from the perspective of people who live in different regions of the country other than my orange bubble here. And it's been an awesome experience. The theme really for the several videos I've been doing recently are old money vacation destinations, which we've covered almost all the major regions in the country right now. And North America, we've done Canada, the Midwest, California, the mountain western states, Florida, the Northeast, and Hawaii. And then we've also are releasing a video tomorrow. The members can access it today. Like one of the benefits of being members, you can get all of our videos 24 to 48 hours early of all the old and new money European destinations. We've also, on the member side, released a new members only video, which I do at least one a month, about the top 10 cities in America for white collar crime. So if that's something that's interesting to you, check out our members section of Analyzing Finance with Nick. For the bonus videos, you got to be in the bonus video tier. So then for this one, I just want to answer all your questions about travel, the economics of the travel industry, where certain people on the class scale travel for business or personal reasons around the world. What are my thoughts on travel? What are my personal travel stories of places I've gone for the tour and my world travels previously? As you probably know, I've visited several countries around the world in 6 continents and now 48 states. We're going to be celebrating when I visit all 50 states next May with a giant meetup party in Kansas City, Kansas, because Kansas and Missouri are the last two that I need to check off the list. And for those who are in the Plains region, I look forward to seeing you there. Okay, good. And I'll take generally any Q&A. I will prioritize super chats, and I will also prioritize questions related to travel and tourism, given that this is the theme of this video. But first question I have is how Brazil's visa affects tourism there. Oh, so are you talking about that the restrictions that Brazilians have coming to America, or the restrictions that Brazil places on American tourists and others? Uh, can you clarify that before I answer your question? Generally, though, if you make it visas harder, it disincentivizes travel because people just don't want to go through the hassle of having to get a visa. Like if Brazil, for example, and I haven't really followed this closely because I thought Brazil, the US and Brazil was in the visa free travel category. But if, for example, the Brazil requires Americans now to get tourist visas, a lot less people are going to be willing to go there. And a lot less people are willing to go to Brazil generally over the last few years just due to perceptions of public safety. Like when I mentioned the idea of visiting Rio, a lot of people say you better bring a bodyguard. That's one of the common things I hear. And it's just generally regarded lots of parts of Brazil, particularly along the coast, as not being safe. Um, I know of people who have gone to Brazil, including family members who went there for the Amazon, particularly to see like on a boat cruise on the up the Amazon River, and it's someplace I would like to go eventually, probably to Manaus and to Rio and maybe Porto Alegre or some of the nice beach areas. But it's not on the current top of my list, but it is on the list though. So yeah, one day I would love to do a analyzing finance with Nick meetup in Brazil. Uh, but the public safety issue is a really even concerns me somewhat. Do you think that in 10 years Texas will be economically viable to live in as it is now or has been. Well, yeah, I mean, it will still be economically viable to live in 10 years. I don't think Texas is going to have a cost of living crisis like California or New York did. Uh, and the reason really for that is because they just have so much empty land and a lot of flat land. And so um, it is like easy to develop, and it's a red state with a lot um, of freedom to build. Like Houston literally has no zoning laws. So I think that housing prices will remain affordable in Texas, and the high property taxes also prevents land speculation from being profitable. And so as a result, that opens up like housing more to owner occupiers, and so that will also keep housing prices down. And energy will be cheap there because it's a place where a lot of the energy is extracted and to enter its regulatory environment. So, yeah, I would generally think that Texas is going to be in good shape. I think businesses will continue to move in Texas. I don't really see. I thought Texas had a risk of becoming a blue state maybe a few cycles ago, but after the strong showing in 2024 and the way that Latino voters are moving in general and Catholic voters are moving in general, I think Texas is going to be a safe red state for the foreseeable future. So at least the next 5 election cycles. And so, yeah, I don't see any reason why. The only thing is that could risk with Texas is that it just the climate gets worse and it gets hotter and less comfortable for people to live there. And there's also just a lack from a tourist perspective, a lack of things to do compared to states and regions of the world of similar size. I mean, I guess you got the Houston rodeo, but apart from that, Texas seems like a place that's more for living and doing business than for going on vacation. Uh, and the form of tourism be a strong indicator of social class? Do you mean like the form of transportation or how long you go on vacation? Can you please add some more context to that? But in general, there are some indicators. Like if you are, I think cruises oftentimes are more of a middle class thing. Like the cheap ones tend to be lower middle class, and the more expensive ones tend to be more upper middle class, with the exception of maybe like Antarctic cruises. But cruises are generally within the middle and professional class realm. Um, I think that I think airplanes too, like air travel has become a lot more accessible. It used to be an upper middle class or above thing, like pre 1990, but air travel has gotten way more affordable. So even like the most budget college students and low income people can afford to fly internationally. So that's not really a signal really anymore. I think length of time matters more. Like if you are wealthier, you can afford to go on longer vacations, especially if you're, this might not apply if you're European, because as the whole month of August essentially closed in Europe. So that doesn't really apply. But for North Americans, the longer you go on vacations, it's either you are like a college student at the summer break, but assuming like you're past the age of 25 and under the age of 65, the longer vacations that go, the wealthier you are and the higher class you tend to be. Um, and also where you go. Like if you go to like that's what the whole geography of wealth travel series is about. Um, the farther away and the more obscure and harder to place gets you are, the more likely you are to be old money. And the more flashy, expensive places, but with very easily accessible airports, are more likely to be new money. I got a super chat. Thank you, Casey Kool-Aid King. If you had to spend a week in Switzerland and remain in the same city and town for the entire time, what city and town would you visit? Well, I mean, I've been to Switzerland several times, and I'm going back there actually this this summer in September and August, and I'm going to be having two meetups in Switzerland, which I might as well just mention now because you're asking me the question. We're having one in Zurich on Tuesday, September 2nd, and one in Geneva on September 3rd. The Zurich one, we already got a good turnout, so it's going to be fun. Geneva, is the attendance seems to be light, so I might scrap it if not enough people sign up for Geneva. But we're definitely going to have the Zurich meetup and probably the Geneva. And I look forward to seeing my Swiss audience there, or if you happen to be on vacation. But where would I go? Depends what you want to do and what time of the year. If you're going in the winter, I would probably go to St. Moritz because it's one of the nicer ski resorts. It's got old money vibes. It's a very classy upscale place, and it has that whole region, Graubünden, has a lot of good options for skiing. Um, Gstaad could be another one, but I've never been there, so I can't really verify for it. If you want to go in the summer, um, I would say Zurich probably has the most to do. So I'd just say like the area around Lake Zurich. You can hang out in the city of Zurich. There's a lot of history there. There's a lot of fun daytime activities. You go swimming in the lake. You go to Rapperswil, it's the town on the other side of the lake, where they have like an old style medieval castle. You can play life size chessboards all over the place. They have a water park called Alpamare in a suburb called Pfäffikon, which is also in the greater Zurich area, which is really fun. And Zurich also has the most bars, I think, per capita of any European city. I'm personally not a drinker, but for those who like nightlife, Zurich is actually a pretty cool city for that. And it's very safe and very walkable, and the trains run on time. So, like Zurich, if I had to spend a place for a week in the summer, it's probably where I would go. If you want something more relaxed, the other place I would pick is Lugano. Lugano's got the most mild climate in Zurich. It's a smaller town, but it's on a nice lake. It's a little bit warmer to swim in. It's got great Italian food, and it's got all the benefits of Italian culture, but the timeliness and the efficiency of Switzerland. Like if I were to move to Europe, the city I'd probably live in would be Lugano, Switzerland. So if you want the more relaxing, like stereotypical European vacation where you're sipping some Pellegrino and eating some pasta at a cafe and just moseying around and chilling at the lake, than Lugano. But if you want more action, it's Zurich. But I could also spend a week in Bern too. Bern's pretty fun as well. So yeah, um, I love Switzerland. I'm biased because I'm Swiss, but it's a great country to visit. And if I couldn't live in America, that's probably where I would live. Oh yeah, and then the Bear Pit in Bern too. And surprisingly, Bern is the place where I've had the best chicken wings in my life. And I'd rank it probably fourth or fifth in terms of best food countries in the world. It's very underrated. Uh, all right. How much would an American need to buy their own home in Switzerland and retire? It like the typical homes in Switzerland are expensive compared to most of America, but it's cheap compared to like California. Like a nice home in Switzerland is gonna probably be at least $1 million USD. But like in places, in some parts of this country where um, the average home prices are 3 million plus, that's not that bad. But it also depends on where you live. Like Zurich is more expensive; it's probably closer to the threes in the millions. Whereas other places that are more rural are more affordable. Zug is the most expensive canton. It's expensive as like New York or the nicest parts of LA, just because it has lower taxes than other parts of Europe. So it really depends where you live, but it's similar to a higher end city in America, like living in like Los Angeles, Miami, New York, that level, like San Diego, San Francisco. So yeah, like so if you want a proxy, it's about the price level overall. Like, and houses might be a little cheaper than some of those cities, but the other things like food and transportation and schools and private schools and things like that might run a little bit higher. So it's probably a wash. Um, did you hear about the Stanford researcher who told ChatGPT they lost their job and wanted to know where to find the tallest bridges in the area? Um, Yeah, I mean, ChatGPT, I never heard of that, but I'm not surprised because ChatGPT is an AI. AIs aren't supposed to have empathy as they're not human. That's kind of and AIs in general have the hallucination problem. So you need to always have a very heavy grain of salt before what's it called? Before taking advice or trusting the research from AI. That's the lesson learned from there. But yeah, um, let's see. I heard Miami apartments were cheap. Yeah, maybe in the neighborhoods you don't want to be in, but if you want to live in a place that's like nice and upscale and safe and close to the water, it's catching up to California. It's just the taxes are lower. Is political instability becoming a bigger concern for travel in Mexico in context for foreigners buying houses and vacation spots? Well, I don't really think Mexico is the best place to be buying real estate anyway as a foreigner because of the 99-year lease rule, even though, and the fact that there's a lot of restrictions for buying property within 100 miles of the coast. Uh, so yeah, it's not like there. If you want to buy Latin America, there are better countries that have better track record for property rights than Mexico. Um, so I mean that so even without the political instability, and then there is kind of what's going on with the cartels, which is kind of scaring away a lot of tourists from Mexico, even though they generally do not attack tourist areas. You have to have certain precautions. Like I wouldn't go to a bar alone at night in Mexico, as an example. But like most people who go to tourist destinations and stick to lively areas and travel in groups and stay out of like the seedier parts of their economy will probably be fine. I think Mexico is a great place to go on vacation. Um, yeah, let's see. Next question that I have here. What are your thoughts on CFA charter versus MBA or other degrees? CFA is useful if you want to work in the buy side and do asset management. Um, and if an MBA is useful if you're trying to switch careers. If you're not looking to switch careers, I think that those are not necessary. And if you don't want to work on the buy side, a CFA is not necessary. So it depends what you want to do. That's my opinion on it. Um, let's see. When I was a kid, Disney World used to be a middle class family status. It came by 2010 an upper middle class, and now it's starting to possibly be even an upper class. But I think it's now in the upper middle class territory because Disney has rose its prices far above the rates of inflation. And that along with globalization of tourism has kept the demand of Disney adults has kept the demand higher than it would be otherwise, despite a falling natural birth rate and therefore less kids going to a place like Disneyland. So that's kind of my answer to what's it called? That take. Um, let's see. Next question I have here is I think I missed a few while I was answering the stuff about Switzerland. How do you have you read the Road to Serfdom? I read it more as a warning against hypercapitalism. I read the Road to Serfdom when I was food poisoned in Greece. Um, and I couldn't really leave the hostel I was staying at the time, so I downloaded a copy of The Road to Serfdom, and I read it, and I think it's a great book, and it's worth reading. And I think the opposite message. I think it's the danger of government getting too involved and regulating the economy to death, and therefore forcing only the really big, strong companies to survive. Because government regulation actually helps a lot of bigger, more established companies because they have the resources and the lobbying power and the compliance abilities and to bear those costs, whether small businesses can't and drop out. And you see that a lot of regulatory capture is an issue in a lot of industries that larger, more established companies use it to kind of keep out competition. So yeah, I've read The Road to Serfdom. It's a good book. I live in Toronto. Do you think that insane real estate prices can be sustained long term? Well, if you keep letting in, I used to think that it wasn't the case and that it would inevitably correct. I've been kind of a bear on Canadian real estate since 2019. So what do I know? But I think that they can be sustainable as long as Canada continues its um, excessive immigration policy. If they keep and the combination of restricting development and having large inflows of immigration as a percentage of the population, Canada has a much more open border than the United States does, and legally, and they're letting in a lot more immigrants, and they're not really expanding housing supply to catch up. And so that, along with the fact that real estate prices have gone up so long, it's kind of created a culture of speculation. And the combination of the two is creating a lot more demand than there would be supply. But eventually it will break just because the demographics and the politics of immigration start to go the other way. So, yeah, that's kind of my take on that. I think it's inevitable that it eventually will correct to align with the incomes of the area. But it's just how long can you keep an unsustainable immigration policy, and how long can the economy keep growing, at least in nominal terms? Because Canada's GDP has grown positively, but its GDP per capita has been flat to down since 2015, just because all their growth is simply just population growth. It's not real productivity gains. I did a video about this called "The Economic Future of Canada" back in December 2023, where I go into this whole housing thing and how everybody in Canada's trying to be their own mini rentier, and all the problems it causes by that. Um, and yeah, there, watch it. And that leads us, are we living in a time of rentier capitalism? Not entirely. It depends on the industry. I think the real estate industry in certain places has become that way. And I think countries like Canada and Australia are probably rentier capitalist countries. But I think overall, there's still enough opportunities that are relatively free in the market that are not captured by rentier for incentive structures. Um, let's see. Soros took a break from the market in 1990 because he thought it was too irrational. Do you see a parallel today? I thought it was Stan Druckenmiller, not George Soros, who took the break after he got burned in the tech bubble, or maybe he did it in 2000. I don't think it's quite that way today, but there are still opportunities here and there. But you can be involved in the market and not have to trade. Like, I mean, if you're a hedge fund, that's one thing, but if you're a longer term investor, um, you just sit out and wait for better opportunities. Like, I've done that all the time for my portfolio and my client's portfolio. If the market's not compensating me to take risk, there's nothing that I need to do. Like Warren Buffett's famous for saying, investing is like baseball, except you can't get called on strike three. And that's just my answer to that. You're not going to get called a strikeout. So don't swing the bat if the opportunity is there. Where should I buy a vacation property? Thinking the Bahamas. Well, it depends on the valuations and where do you want to go personally. Um, I would personally, if I had to buy vacation properties, there's a few places I'd have in mind. One, Hawaii, because I just like Hawaii. Um, I think also probably like Switzerland, also for similar personal reasons. I think Spain and Portugal are probably not bad places to look for vacation destinations. And like the Cayman or Barbados, which I think is probably going to be on the rise and upscale its tourist destination. So I think Barbados could have some potential, and Uruguay and Chile. Um, those are probably the places I would have in mind for vacation. But I'm not a real estate expert. I'm not investing in international real estate professionally. So take what I say with a heavy, heavy grain of salt. And another disclosure is that I have to say nothing in this live stream is investment advice. Please do your own research and due diligence, or contact a financial advisor. If you want to ask me specific questions about your own personal financial situation or wealth management or financial planning, anything like that, you can schedule a call or a consultation with me. And here's the links if you want just like general call, or if you want specific like investment related consultation, here's the link for that. Now back to the questions. Best place to travel in terms of bang for your buck in the US? Well, there's a few places. I mean, I would say the Southeast in general, like your money goes really far. in places like Tennessee, Kentucky, the deep South. Like I would. The problem is that none of those places are kind of worth going all by themselves. So like I recommend doing a road trip. Like you maybe start in like I don't know Cincinnati or New Orleans or Atlanta and just drive around that entire region. It could be fun. Uh, I would. That's probably where your money would go the farthest. The Midwest too, like northern Michigan is I think a value destination. It's in summer. It's super nice. Swimming in the Great Lakes is warmer than the Pacific Ocean. A lot of good boating, a lot of upper class type vibes like Mackinac Island and all those areas. So I'd say northern Michigan. And Wisconsin and just the Great Lakes region in the summer is very underrated too in the United States. So I'd probably say that's number one because I think I'd have more fun in the Great Lakes than in the Deep South. Deep South is probably the most money value in terms of lowest, like more affordability. But in terms of bang for your buck, I would say the Great Lakes in the summer. Let's see. Next question. Where is the best place to move for my child's high school? Open to private or public education? Um, I mean, can you live in any city you want? Do you have career restrictions? Like, what are you looking for in education? Like, I wouldn't really pick a city to live just based on the schools, unless if I have to stay in a metro area for my job and I'm picking for the best. I mean, like because even if you don't really like the school, there's always usually a good private Catholic school in every major metropolitan area, or you can always homeschool your kids if you don't trust the school system inherently. Like I don't really personally trust the public school system at all, so whenever I have children it's either going to be some sort of homeschool pod where I team up with other parents and we hire teachers and build our own school, or I send them to a Catholic school because of my own personal beef with the public school system. So that would be my view. I don't think there's really any city you should move to for schools. There are probably certain states you should avoid because they have bad schools more than the other way around. Like I think Florida has a reputation for really bad public schools. Southern California or California in general, outside of wealthy suburbs, is not known for good public schools either. And a lot of the deep South is not good for public schools. And yeah, I mean, really, basically, the entire Sun Belt is not really good for public schools. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, and I'm saying this as somebody who spent half of his education in public school. And I think on the university level, there's plenty of great public universities like the UC system, University of Michigan, University of Virginia, University of North Carolina, um, University of Washington, UT Austin, and Florida. University of Florida is even on the rise. There are a lot of good public schools on the college level, um, but yeah, you have but high school, it's particularly grades 6 through 12, middle school and high schools, or America's public school system is relatively weak, and yeah, and probably disproportionately so in the Sun Belt states. Uh, let's see. Next question I have is what that I got here is I'm trying to see which ones are more travel related. Do you think housing market will end up like Japan due to collapsing birth rates? Japan is littered with abandoned houses. I think it's very possible. I think there's going to be a waterfall eventually due to the boomers dying and not enough young people to replace them. I did a video about this on the channel. It's my debunking the doomer about real estate. Um, and I recommend watching that for my full thoughts on this topic because I I haven't memorized all the data on like it's like basically it's called the video is called Why the Global Housing Shortage is Misunderstood, and I go into all the data involving that question. Hey, have you thought about visiting Africa? I have visited Morocco before. That's the only place I've been to in Africa. There are certain countries I would like to go in Africa and places. I would like to go particularly to Tanzania. I'd like to see the area around Kilimanjaro where you do safaris, and as well as go to Zanzibar. So that's very up on my list. Mauritius and Seychelles, even though they're technically Indian Ocean islands, like by UN standards, they're kind of classified as Africa. So I'd like to go there. Kenya, I would like to see, and Egypt. So those are kind of the places in Africa that I would like to visit for personal reasons. Um, but I mean, I don't know if I was doing a meetup in Africa though for analyzing finance with Nick, but that's and also I feel like in Africa, it's a place you need to have a 5-star budget to do it. Otherwise, you're going to be concerned about a lot of things you wouldn't be if you went to other countries. So that's why it's kind of on the back of my list because I kind of want to do it like without any concern for expenses and just kind of ball out when I go to Africa. Um, since you don't have a family, do you travel in the low season? Um, I Well, it depends if the low season is materially worse weather or not. Like ideally, I would travel in the shoulder seasons because you still have a good chance of getting the good climate of the peak season, um, but you get it at a much better price. So like I'm more of a shoulder season guy than the low season because a lot of low season is low season for a reason. Usually it's hurricane season if it's in the Caribbean, or extreme heat if you're going like to the American Southwest, or extreme cold if you're going to the Northeast in the winter, or Europe in the winter. So I'm very fussy when it comes to weather. So that's why I would prefer shoulder seasons in terms of my travel destinations. And I do a lot of traveling with my relatives, and so they often can't make it during the off seasons. So, but like, yeah, that's kind of I'm fortunate that I'm flexible really with my travel plans. Um, yeah, like so that's kind of my take on it. Um, what's else? Is there a meaningful difference between the travel habits of middle class Americans compared to European middle class? Yeah, American middle class probably travel less, but it's not really to the same degree as what people would say because there's like a geography issue. Like the United States, especially even if you exclude Alaska and Hawaii, is about the same size as the European Union land wise. So, like, if a European might go to a bunch of different countries, but they're the same distance apart as our states. And so the better question to ask is like, how often do middle class Europeans leave the EU and surrounding areas, which would be the equivalent of how many Americans leave North America, whether US, Canada, Mexico, or the Caribbean? I think they're probably about the same. So, yeah. And that's kind of my take on it. I think Europeans have much more vacation time, but they also have much lower incomes. So they can't are much more willing to have much more modest vacations. Like Europeans are way more comfortable like staying in hostels or traveling the slower and cheaper way, like using like buses or trains, or just like not being and like to and yeah, because they have to make more. They have more time, but they have less money, so they have to be more like they can afford to be slow, but they need to be more cost conscious. And this isn't always the case, but I think that's probably the difference in both on the middle class level. Um, and I think Europeans are more likely to go to different destinations. Like Americans are more likely to travel, obviously, to within the United States, Canada, Hawaii, Mexico, Caribbean, South America, um, where and Asia and East Asia. Whereas European middle and upper middle class are more likely to go to across Europe, of course, the eastern coast of North America, and they're likely to go to Africa and like the Middle East and Dubai, where so and that's just mainly due more geographical proximity more than anything. And also, I mean, and I think they're both equally likely to repeat destinations. It's just different places. Hopefully that answers your question. Um, let's see. Um, I'm trying to see the. I'm gonna scroll up and see if I think I missed some questions, but let me check because they kind of come in like bursts. Uh, and that's another question actually for my non-US or just even American. Like, if your travel plans change because of concerns of recent policy moves, like, has that made you more or less willing to go to other countries? I hear a lot about that in the news, but I would like to see if that's actually affecting real behavior because the economic data I've seen on that is mixed. So I can't really draw a conclusion on it one way or the other. But it is something I'm curious about to see if like people are actually changing their travel plans based on border crossing fears. Uh, let's see. I feel like I thought I'm just sometimes I just miss these questions here. So what's your opinion on Bitcoin? I'm not going to talk about specific investments or trades on the live stream. What is your favorite Latin American country to visit? Um, yeah, I mean, I would say I've only been there once, but the one I had the most fun in was Uruguay. It's got good weather. It's got good ways if you like to surf. The water's warm. Punta del Este is very clean. It's very safe. It's very upscale. Doesn't have a lot of like the stereotypical poverty issues that are concerning about Latin America. Some of the best steaks I've ate in my life are in Uruguay because I get all the good beef from Argentina and locally. I think that's one of my favorites. I also like Argentina because you can play polo for very cheap, and it's really hard to find an affordable place to play horse polo outside of Argentina. And then I like Mexico too. Mexico has really nice tropical beaches. Like for people who live on the West Coast, like the closest warm weather, like bathwater, like tropical ocean you can go to is like Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. So if you want that experience and you don't want to fly for more than 3 hours, Mexico is kind of the place to go. I like the food in Mexico. Um, it's yeah, it's generally it's a fun place to visit. So yeah, I mean, I would put those in one, two, and three: Uruguay, Argentina, and Mexico um, for Latin American countries. Uh, yeah, let's see. Next question that I have here is do you think there's any scenario where European wages stagnate so much, so shrink relative to the US, that we see more migration from Europe in search of a better economy? I mean, if legal immigration wasn't as difficult as it is now, I think you would already see that. There's just like in general, it's pretty hard to legally move to the United States if you're looking for employment. H-1B selection, for all the controversy it has, and is not easy for Europeans to get those outside of a few certain niche industries. Um, so yeah, it's like the immigration restrictions are probably preventing a lot of Europeans who otherwise would. Because I think a lot of ambitious, entrepreneurial minded Europeans would probably already want to come to America. Uh, and, but like they just can't because of immigration and visa issues. Um, so, I mean, and if it did continue, I think there would be more pressure, but I think it wouldn't be really it'd probably be the same rate as people coming from like East Asia. So that's kind of my take on it. Um, let's see. Have you ever been to Tahiti, Samoa, or Fiji? I've been to Fiji. I have not been to the other two. I would like to go to French Polynesia, particularly Bora Bora. It's on my bucket list. It's probably a trip I'd like to do after I'm married, though. Uh, do you play polo? I played once in Argentina, and it was one of my favorite sporting experiences I've ever done. And I would like to do it again if I ever went down there. It's just too cost prohibitive to do it in the United States. Even upper middle class people would have a hard time affording it in the States because polo club memberships aren't cheap. You got to buy horses and take care of them, and there's just a lot, and then the time constraints. It's not really practical for most Americans to play polo domestically, and that's why you don't. It's only really an elite sport here, um, and yeah, that's my answer about polo. Do you like Cabo? Is there that where old or new money travels to? No, Cabo is a middle class to upper middle class to travel destination. It's not old or new money. I'm not a fan of Cabo personally. Um, it's a lot hotter than California, but the ocean water isn't warm enough to compensate. It's also very desert. Like if I want to go to a desert, I'd rather go to Arizona. That personally, um, or Egypt, just because of the history and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think Cabo's okay. They have a nice golf course. I played at there. I think the water's too cold for swimming, even in July, without a wetsuit. And yeah, I think you could and it's just a lot where a lot of people go kind of just for quick getaways and to party from Southern California. It's not really my type of vacation destination. If Mexico, I kind of have a phrase. I like to travel south of the Cabo line. So I don't like going to Mexico unless it's south of Cabo. Or that's my take on it. Um, have you ever been to Taiwan? No, I have not been to Taiwan. Um, yeah, so that's the answer to that question. Uh, does cultural immersion appeal to upper class, or is a luxury when you have the money? What do you mean by cultural immersion? Is it like you mean living like the locals? That's usually a thing that more appeals to I would say younger people, like, or those on a budget. Um, so I don't really think. Well, I mean, and also like the upper classes are pretty globalized in the sense that like a good quality life is similar in a lot of places. I mean, there's different religions and customs and foods and traditions, but but like there's certain creature comforts that are kind of global across the upper middle classes and above. So yeah, I think it's actually the opposite. Like cultural immersion is more common when you don't have the luxury to insulate yourself from it. Um, let's see. That's my answer to that question. Um, but yeah, the other thing too about the U.S. difference is that like Americans on average only get about 2 to 3 weeks of vacation, depending on how much seniority you have on your company. So it's going to be hard for you to travel to places like Australia or East Asia or India or like Africa, where it may take over a day to get there, and you probably due to jet lag need to some quite a bit of time to recover. So I think that also impacts travel. Like when I did work at a bigger companies, I would batch my vacation time so I could go to farther away places because I don't really. It's hard for me to relax if I don't go at least um, 4 time zones east or 2 time zones west from California. It's because if I'm too in line with the American work week and the stock market, it makes it harder for me to decompress. So yeah, that's kind of my take on that, and I think Americans may have. But also, a lot of Americans, probably due to the work culture, and this is just my theory, probably don't want to go on vacation as long because you get restless and want to go back to what you're doing, especially if you're a business owner. Like, I went on a vacation a few years ago to Hawaii for 10 days. And after about day 8, I was kind of ready to go home because I was nice and relaxed and rejuvenated. And I was like, you know what? I have a business to grow. I need to get back home and I need to get things done. I mean, ideally, if I had the time for it, I would just spend a week every quarter in Hawaii to decompress. But I don't really have the luxury to do that just yet. I have other places I need to travel to, such as seeing you guys on the tour and or family related trips that are planned out years in advance to new destinations. But like, yeah, once I'm like at vacation optimizing mode in my life, yeah, just spend a week in a tropical island every quarter and then maybe have a 2-week vacation in Europe or some new place I've never been to before. And that would be kind of like my ideal amount of vacation time, like 6 weeks of vacation spread across the year. Actually, maybe add 7 because I would take like the last couple weeks, a week to 2 or 2 of the year off because nobody really works between December 15th and New Year's Eve in most white collar professions. And most people, like if you have a business, your clients generally don't want to do anything those 2 weeks. They want to just enjoy the holidays with their families. So, yeah, that's also a good time to take vacation and also a good time to just relax and reflect and review your year. But I generally don't travel that much. It's kind of more staycation time, the holidays. Like, and also maybe because I fortunately live in a place where it's not too cold in the winter. So I don't really need to travel in winter to get out of cold. So I'm very fortunate for that living here in California. Um, yeah. It seems like you guys are all having a chat about your own future trips to East Asia. But speaking of the East and speaking of the tour, we actually are going to do a tour stop in Australia in February of 2026. But I'm not going to reveal details more about that until they're all hard and solid in terms of specific days. But that will be happening for Australian subscribers. And for the rest of the tour stops, we have a lot of them still coming up this summer. I will be back in Northern California on August 23rd in Santa Cruz. So Bay Area people, if you want to see me, that's probably the closest. I will also be having a meetup in Amsterdam on August 30th. So for Northern Europeans, that's probably the closest. I think I accidentally sent the link to Zurich on the chat. Here's the one for Amsterdam. So, and then I'm also going to be doing an event in Rome for Catholic Jubilee on September 5th. So Italian subscribers or fellow Catholic pilgrims, come see me there. And then I'm going to be in Boston on September 20th. And I might add other stops in the Northeast depending on what I need to do out there. And then I've got, last but not least, I'm wrapping up the tour in San Diego on October 4th. And I'm going to take a break for the holidays and Thanksgiving, Christmas, etc., and probably start doing the tour back again in 2026. And if you want to vote on where I go next year for the tour, here is the survey to vote on that. Yeah. I get what you're saying about Amsterdam, and I'm like the opposite of that. That's why I've waited till my mid 30s to go to Amsterdam because I was never interested in that kind of culture. I just been everywhere else in Western Europe, and I would like to see the Netherlands and Belgium. So, and Amsterdam is the biggest city in that region. It's also the equity derivatives and derivatives trading capital of Europe. So, like a lot of finance people in Europe live there and are out there, and so I thought it'd be a good place to have a meetup. But yeah. Nick, do you think most entry level FP&A accounting jobs are at risk. I used to be there and pivoted, and I'm constantly hearing outsourcing to other countries. I think AI is the bigger risk rather than outsourcing to other countries because a lot is just like rote data entry type stuff, and it's logical things that could be solved by like an LLM algorithm. So yeah, I do think that AI is a real risk for entry level in FP&A and accounting. Um, yeah, I would like to go to Bruges. That's the place I would like to go in Belgium. I've heard Brussels is kind of like visiting like Dallas or Atlanta. It's an important city for like business and I guess their business politics, but not really a tourist place. I mean, if you do have recommendations on what to do in Belgium, whether it's Bruges or Antwerp or Brussels or anywhere I should go there, feel free to let me know because I'm going to have a couple days in Belgium to check it out. Um, so yeah, that's my take on that. Uh, all right, next question is does hypersonic air travel have a future or is it just a gimmick? I mean, I would like it if they brought something back like the Concorde and I get to Europe in half the time or across the Pacific Ocean in 5 hours would be pretty nice. But it's just it hasn't been able to make cost effective or fuel efficient enough that enough people would actually fly it. Like it is kind of a sad state of modern engineering that the airline the planes in the 1970s and 1980s were flying in the 1990s were flying faster than the ones today in many cases, and Concorde is an example of that. Um, so yeah, what does the upper class do when they travel? I mean, it's more of a personality thing. Um, like upper class people, they go to this they do similar activities. They go see a lot of the tourist sites. They do a lot of like recreational activities, whether it's sports or beach or going to nice restaurants or same stuff that you would do. They just do it at higher price points. They'll stay at nicer hotels. They'll probably eat at fancier restaurants. They'll do things that are more exclusive and guard gated if they want to keep their privacy, or they own property in these places and they go just where their family lives and or visit their rich friends who have properties in those places. So they might actually have, in some ways, be a little bit more cost efficient. But I don't think they're doing that much different. People mostly travel to relax and or experience novelty. And I think that's something that is across all class structures. It's just that there's different ways of doing that. Um, yeah, but like yeah, I think that the reason why I'm going to talk about over tourism, even though you're not really asking about this, because I don't think I'm going to do a video about it, so I might as well do it here. Over tourism in Europe is really just a byproduct of affordability of air travel. Like flying to Europe, adjusted for inflation, has dropped probably by over 50% since 2000 or since the 1990s. I remember like in the 1990s to fly to like Switzerland, it was $1,000 and I can fly to Switzerland for the same time this 2025 for $825 round trip. So, like, and there's been a lot of inflation since 1997. Yet, I think I could fly there cheaper than the first time I went to Switzerland in 1997. So, that is something why I think you're seeing more tourism, just simply because cheap air travel has made it a lot more accessible. The emergence of discount airlines like EasyJet, Ryanair out there, and Norwegian Air to connect transatlantic was kind of the started to bring the competitive price pressure down for air travel. The other thing too is the euro has been weak for a long time, and so it's made it attractive for non-Europeans to go there because their currencies are going a lot farther. In 2025, the euro has rallied quite a bit, so it's back near purchase power parity. So maybe that might, on the margins, discourage from traveling there. But the combination of a weak euro and affordable and just the lower wages in Europe, just lowering the overall price level of things means that traveling to Europe is often more affordable to Americans than traveling to Hawaii or other parts of America. Like that's one reason why I haven't gone to Hawaii as much because I love Hawaii, but I like to see new places. And it was cheaper for me to go to Europe multiple times and to go to South America and to go to Asia than it was to go to Hawaii for the same amount of time. And even for half the amount of time, like 1 week in Hawaii is probably the same price or more expensive than going 2 weeks in South America or in Western Europe, depending on how you like to travel. So, um, yeah, though those are kind of factors I think that's driving quote unquote over tourism in Europe. It's just simply that tourism has become a lot more affordable. And also a lot of things that people used to spend their money on instead of tourism, like buying a house, getting married, having kids, have become a lot more expensive. So the discretionary income is going away from like family formation related activities and more towards tourism, particularly for older millennials. So that's kind of my take. Do the wealthy go to places like Monaco? Yeah, they do go to Monaco, but I don't think they're exclusively going to Monaco. Like Monaco is not very big. It's smaller than Corona del Mar, California, or a upscale neighborhood in most mid-sized cities. Like you can walk across the whole thing in an hour. So it's not it's you're gonna I don't you're gonna run out of things to do fairly quickly. Usually, if you're going to Monaco, you go there as part of like an extended trip to the French Riviera, and Monaco is like a stop on your trip. You do a day trip there from wherever you're staying, or maybe you stay in Monaco if you want to be really glitzy, but your money would go a lot farther and you could have probably a nicer hotel and more space if you just stayed a little bit outside in France. And you probably just go in to visit Monaco, go to the casino, Monte Carlo, or just like go to Formula One Grand Prix when that's in town, or go swimming by the yachts, or just walk around and explore it. But like, yeah, it is generally an exclusive place, but you could take a train there pretty easily from Italy or France and just get off at the Monaco train station and walk around. I did that when I was doing my semester abroad in college. So it's very expensive to stay there, and the restaurants there are quite pricey, but you can you can go there if you really wanted to. Uh, let's see. Um, Seychelles is exclusively rich. Yeah, it still is an old money vacation destination for Europeans, the Seychelles. Um, you're kind of spoiling my old money vacation guide, where I'm going to talk about more about the Seychelles. But yeah, the Seychelles is very small. It's in the northern Indian Ocean. It's kind of a very high end vacation place. How to get a job that pays 300K? Um, that's too vague of a question for me to answer. I don't know anything about your credentials or your qualifications or really anything like that. So yeah, and your age. There's a lot of variables. How do you get a job in quant and finance that if you go to a non-selective school as an older student? Can you tell me about companies like Citadel and Jane Street? Well, those companies, a lot of them are kind of fussy about prestige, but a lot of them just try to have raw IQ test ways of testing your aptitude. So if you're smart, they'll find a place for you and you have the skills that they want. But yeah, I mean, you need to have a passion for quant finance and the mathematical aptitude to do what, and the coding aptitude to do what they want you to do. I never personally was into quant, so I can't really be helpful about more specifics than that. Um, but yeah, I'm trying to focus more on questions related to travel because this is the theme of the live stream is international travel. Um, yeah, Rome in summer is wall to wall. Yeah, I mean, I only been there in October and I'm going in September 5th. Hopefully by then it's a little bit less crowded, but yeah, I'm expecting it to be a zoo, particularly at the Vatican. Um, how about vacationing in Russia? It's probably not a very good idea right now, especially if you're an American. There's safety concerns and not coming home concerns. Do you have any thoughts on Reunion Island? It's something I've been curious about. It's one of those Indian Ocean islands that decided to stay part of France instead of declaring independence like the Seychelles and Mauritius did. Um, and I've heard it's a very exotic vacation spot. I don't really know. It's not really known for particularly being old or new money. Um, it's kind of just out there, but I don't really know enough about it. But I've heard good things from people I know who've been in that area of the world. Do you use miles when traveling? If you do, what card issue or what advice do you have? I'm not going to reveal like my specific credit cards or things like that, but I mean, I did use like an airline credit card for a long time, and I got miles that way. It helped pay for some of my travels. Like, so I mean, I use it and it gives me like free checked bags and other things like that. So there are some perks for using, and I think what I've learned from this experience is that airline tickets are not really the biggest barrier to travel. The main expense is hotels and lodging when you travel. And when I think like that like would be the card I'd probably prioritize is like a Marriott card or a Hyatt card or something like that, or like a general like Chase or City or whatever bank credit card that you can use the points particularly for hotels. I think that's probably where I think you could get more value than flights in retrospect. Um, yeah, so I'm not an expert on credit cards, so I'm not going to go into specific ones or have advice on it, but that's my take on what I think you probably get the better exchange rate for. Um, let's see. Do you think AI and outsourcing might potentially kill off digital nomad culture, at least for specifically limited to business owners? I think it does have a risk, and I think also just the awareness of it is going to lead to employers saying like, "Hey, wait, you can travel and live other places remote, but I want you in the same time zone for synergy reasons." And if you are going to hire remote, you might as well just hire locals in the cheaper countries in that time zone instead of hiring the digital nomad. And then I think AI, if a lot of jobs are so easy that you can do them just with a few emails and clicks a day on the other side of the world, AI can probably replace those jobs. So, yeah, I do think AI is a threat. And I do think that the fact that US dollar is strong and a lot of these countries like the UK and Canada have relatively weak currencies and similar level of educated skill set, why wouldn't you just hire those people local if you want remote workforce than hiring an American and paying a California level wage for a guy who's living on the other side of the world? From an employer's perspective, it doesn't really make much sense. And I think people are waking up to that. What type of car do you like to drive daily? For privacy reasons, I'm not going to talk about what car I drive. Um, do you use Uber when you travel? Yeah, I do use Uber or Lyft when I travel. Um, it depends on where I'm traveling. Like, I like using trains from the airports if the city has a decent train system because oftentimes the ride shares are in very inconvenient places, especially LAX. I hate the LA exit thing. You have to take the separate bus just to get to a parking lot unless you're willing to pay like $300 plus for black to get to where you live. I don't live in LA. I live a decent distance away. The cost difference for black is kind of prohibitive to a certain degree. Um, and so like that's kind of I think the one place place where public transportation would work for LA is for airport transit. There should just be like a train that connects like Long Beach or Orange County John Wayne Airport to LAX and then goes from LAX to Santa Monica with all those stops in between. And then because airport traffic, LAX has some of the worst traffic of any airport, just getting in and out of there in terms of I had to drive there to take or pick up a bunch of people, and it's very inconvenient. Um, so yeah, I do use Uber and Lyft when I get to places that don't have a good train system, and I need to get to my hotel or wherever I'm going. And I also look at depending on the city where I'm going. are things walkable once I get to the main place or not? Like when I went and visited the Southeast US earlier this year in June, I didn't really use much Uber and Lyft. I rented a car because I went on a road trip and things aren't that close together in these cities. They're very spread out and there's a lot of things to do like national parks and things in between, like Mammoth Caves. And so it's nice to have a car for your own convenience, and the cost of Ubers getting around the distances doesn't make it worthwhile. Whereas, like if I'm in a city like San Francisco, I'll use Waymo because they have it, and I like it much better than Uber personally, just in terms of like the experience of it. And it's a fairly compact city, so and it's fairly walkable, and so the times you really need it are not that frequent. And so, yeah, it really depends where I'm going. Like, if I trust the city's public transit to be safe, I will use that for getting to the airport to where I'm going, and then probably walk or take Ubers once I get to the urban core. Otherwise, I'll take Ubers to my hotel, and then if it's a walkable city or not, I will rent a car or take Ubers or walk or take a train if it's safe. So I'm open minded on how I get around when I travel. Best place for an East Coast road trip with an infant. Well, I mean, I don't have kids yet, so I might not be the best, but like I would say if you're trying to do something with kids, I'd say Florida, honestly. You got beach there, you have Disney World there, you have Key West, which is pretty cool. The Tampa, all of it's like everything in Florida is within a 3 hour drive of each other. So at least the parts that are more touristy, like you just do like a little diamond of like Orlando, Tampa, like the Everglades, Key West, and then like Palm Beach, and kind of go in that like circle. I think that could be fun for like trip with kids. Um, Other one that could be a fun place for a trip with kids might be like driving up the California coast. Like you go to like Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, uh, Big Sur, Hearst Castle, San Francisco. Yeah, San Diego, but that's not really a road trip. It depends where you're from. Like that might be a road trip, like if you live in like Arizona or something like that. But San Diego is another fun, family-friendly destination for kids too. Um, yeah, what's it called? Yeah. How old am I? I'm in my 30s. Let's see. Why do you say the pound is weak? Because it is relative to purchasing power parity. It's not about what the nominal exchange rate is. I know a pound is worth more than a dollar. It's like how much stuff can I buy in England with a pound compared to how much of the same stuff can I buy with $1.35 or whatever the exchange rate is. And so like your dollar goes a lot farther than a pound would, like for the same amount of goods and services. So that's why I say that. Um, no, I don't use debit cards when I travel because, like, in case of like there's something fraudulent or like a unapproved purchase or something, it's a lot easier to get it resolved with a credit card than with a debit card. So that's why I don't really like to use debit cards when I travel. Um, What's your opinion on D to D sales? I don't really. I mean B to B sales. I don't think I've heard of that term. Um, how AI affect macroeconomics from your perspective? I mean, it's a big time. I literally have a playlist on my channel about AI and robotics and economics, where I go into how it affects it. That's like 8 hours long lecture. So, um, yeah, door to door sales. Okay. I mean, I don't think it works anymore. I think it stopped working when in the 1990s when social trust dropped to the level that people just got annoyed by it and didn't want to talk to anybody. Um, so, yeah, I don't think door to door sales is really that effective anymore. So that's my answer. Um, let's see. I'm gonna check some. With the dollar weakening and Trump exclusively wanting to value the currency, you think vacation abroad might become a luxury again for the average American in the not distant future? I think that's a possibility. I think the other thing that would have to make it is oil prices going up enough to actually raise airfares. So an oil, it tends to be priced in dollars. So if the dollar weakens enough that you actually see oil stay above like $80 a barrel or $90 a barrel, international travel is going to become more of a luxury. Increased visa requirements for certain places are going to make it more of a hassle, and that might make it too more expensive. And yeah, weaker dollar is going to make, like, I don't think people would be going to Japan if um, the yen was at 100 versus 140. I could tell you that much. I think that's half the reason why Japan is seeing a tourist boom, because they have one of the most extremely undervalued currencies of the G7. So yeah, I definitely think, like, well, the last time you had a really weak dollar cycle, and unfortunately that's when I did a lot of traveling personally, was from about 2005 to 2013. The dollar index got as low as 72, and I actually lived overseas during then, and everything felt really expensive. And it made, like, I went to Japan, unfortunately, when the yen was at 72 to the dollar. And yeah, everybody's talking about how cheap it is when they're going down. I'm like, yeah, it felt like the opposite when I went to Japan, because the purchase power parity was about 100, and so your money didn't go very far. And yeah, it's the reverse. Like, back then, you're more incentivized to travel locally or to countries whose currencies were fundamentally even weaker than the dollar at that point. So yeah, I think that's it's I think the currency strength does impact a lot of travel, particularly for younger people who have less disposable income, like your typical like backpacker or college student, or somebody who's fresh out of school and has like 2 weeks off for vacation or their first job. They might choose to go domestically if it's a weak dollar. Um, so, do you think Tesla or Waymo will be the go-to for long-term travel, since it's door to door and totally private? Would prefer that to flying. The problem is that the timeline. Like, I think there is a world where I'd be really bullish on, would be the idea of driverless RVs. Like, I don't like driving big tank-sized vehicles. I'm afraid I'll get in a crash. I'll be stressed out to change lanes and parking and all that hassle. Like, I don't really like the idea of, I think it'd be fun to go RVing, but I would never want to drive one personally. But if you can have like an AI drive an RV, I think that would be the viable alternative to flying. Like, you can literally have the RV pick you up at, I don't know, 8 p.m. from New York, and you could, I'm looking up on Google Maps right now just to make sure, like, how long it would take you to drive from New York to Miami. But you go to sleep, and it's basically like having your own apartment on wheels, essentially. And you can wake up the next morning in Florida. Like, that would be pretty cool, honestly. Or you can do the same thing like a Chicago from New York. No, not quite. It's about 12-hour, it's a 19-hour drive from New York to Miami. So it would take a little bit too long. But for shorter term things like flights that are like less 2 hours or less now, you theoretically could replace them with an overnight in a driverless RV, or you can make it like a mini road trip in the sense where you do it in 2 days. Like, you go halfway, like to North Carolina or maybe Myrtle Beach, in Charleston, South Carolina, or DC. You could pick whatever midpoint you want, spend a day there, and then overnight go in the RV and then wake up the next day in Miami. Like, I think it could be a fun way to travel, and it could also be for very high cost of living cities an alternative way to live. Like, you have this apartment sized RV, you can park it out in the middle of nowhere, and it can commute for you while you're asleep and drop you off at the office at 8 o'clock. Go park in some specialized garage for this. Then, when it's time for you to go home, whether work or after work activities or whatever, it will be right at this office parking lot to pick you up, and it can drive you back to the parking lot while you're asleep or brushing your teeth or doing whatever. I thought about that. Could have been like a weird alternative universe, kind of a solution to the San Francisco housing crisis would be driverless RVs. But yeah, I think that's probably where the potential is. I think like Waymo and normal transportation, it's just too. It's not going to go fast enough, and it's not going to be enjoyable enough for overnights, like to sit in a car. So I don't think it's going to replace planes. Like there is EVTOLs. I don't know if you heard of those. They're like these like light humans, these drones that are big enough that a person can sit in them, and they have air taxis that are automated planes essentially. But the battery life is very limited, so like they can't really go more than like 30 miles at the current developed level of development. And so it's going to be a while before we're all flying in EVTOLs to our vacation destinations. Yeah. I mean, I could pay a personal driver to tag along with me, but like you're not just paying them to drive, you're paying them to like stay on your trip for that whole time. And that can really add up because every hour is on the clock. Like in certain countries, like in Mexico or Indonesia or places like that, you can hire a driver for like $100 or $200 a day, and they'll just wait on you and they'll drive you to all the sites in that place. And I've done that before, and it's very cost effective. But in a place like America where labor costs are high, it's just not very viable. I got to wait for my driverless RV, or I maybe have like a family member who wants to come on the trip who doesn't mind it in exchange for me comping his vacation. That might be the way to do that too, now that I think about it. Um, yeah. Then if you were to move somewhere else in the United States, would you go not to retire? So you're just not moving to Florida and lay on the beach. Where are you going? Um, I mean, I run my own business, so I can live really wherever I want. I mean, if I wanted to go to a place to try to grow my assets under management as fast as possible, I want to go where emerging wealth is going. So it's probably Dallas or Miami. Like from a pure business perspective, that's probably the places to go. Dallas, very like if you're trying to start a business and you are agnostic on where you want to live, is might be the best city to be. You can fly anywhere within 3 hours in America from DFW, and DFW I think has the most like I think some of the most destinations internationally of any major airport too. So you go to South America, Asia, Europe, I think all from DFW. Um, and it's on top of that, it's a rapidly growing city. Cost of living is low, and therefore wages are relatively competitive. So if you need to hire employees, you can do it for not too much cost. And yeah, that's kind of where if I was doing it from a pure business perspective, I don't think I'd like living in Dallas personally, but from a purely business bottom line, that's probably the best city. Miami's probably a good one too. It's probably more fun because I like the beach. But that's also where emerging wealth is moving to. I mean, if I was trying to get a job, probably like New York or Chicago, if I didn't mind the cold, because those are kind of like the best places still to get jobs in finance. Um, and I think Chicago's just a fun city. I just hate the snow. Like if Chicago had the same weather as San Francisco, I would move there, or like any other Sunbelt city. But yeah, so I think Chicago's all right. Another place I would consider going if the weather was better. So if I had to basically be like South Florida, um, or Chicago, if I want a mix of business and quality of life. If I wanted, what's it called, to purely money making, it'd be Texas. And if I wanted to live in a place that's just more relaxing vibes and didn't have to worry about having to build a business or get a job, Charleston, South Carolina, or Scottsdale, Arizona, or Hawaii. Those are my more like vacation-y type places that I would consider living. And then if I didn't mind cold, Bozeman, Montana too, but I'm very sensitive to cold weather, so that's why I couldn't really seriously live in Chicago or Bozeman. And if it was less rainy, maybe Seattle too. But like, yeah, those are kind of my takes. Where did I grow up? I grew up in Orange County, California. So, um, No, I really don't want to move to New York. I don't like my money doesn't go very far there. It's cold. It's kind of a little bit too stressful of a lifestyle, for a lack of a better term. I mean, it'd be fun to live there for like a month, like like house sit for a friend or something. I think it'd be pretty cool to like in the springtime. That would be pretty fun for New York, but I don't think I'd want to be there permanently. I go there a lot for business trips, and I'm probably doing another meetup there later. But that's kind of my take on New York. It's great for like a 4 days every other year, like from a tourist perspective. Um, but any more than that, I get a little bit anxious. Um, is um, is cold calling dead? What are the best ways to prospect now? Depends what industry you're in. I think cold calling can work for certain, particularly lower ticket items, but I think if you're trying to cold call, it's more to get a meeting to talk to somebody who might be interested, and then you try to close the sale there. And it's very you're not going to be able to close somebody over a call, like in the modern era. It's very difficult to do, especially for higher ticket items. But I think you could do cold outreach to meet potential prospects. That's still that's still where cold out. I think cold outreach is still a thing, but you're not going to close. I and you just have to be more targeted with it. Make sure that the person you're calling, and you can in the age of LinkedIn and social media and internet, you can look up companies, you can look up individual people, and you can see like who the decision makers are and whether your product actually adds some real value to them. So, yeah. Do you watch college football? Are you USC or UCLA fan? I mean, I did a video about college football if you want to know my love hate relationship with college football. But I used to watch it a lot, like in high school and college. I didn't go to a school that had college football. So I generally rooted for either UCLA or whoever's the best school in the Pac 12 at the time, other than USC. Um, my brother went to UCLA and I went to a UC school, so that kind of counts for my bias on that side of the rivalry. Um, but I don't really have that strong of a ties to any particular team. I just like to see the West Coast do well for college sports. And that for basketball, I'm much more of a Bruin fan though, because I like the whole John Wooden tradition and the history behind UCLA and all that stuff. But like for football, I just like whoever's the best in the West. Um, I don't think the Epstein files have any impact on what I'm doing with this channel. So, yeah. Are you reading any books right now? Do you have any top 5 books that helped you the most? I did do if you join my Substack, um, and I have a list that you can download if you join my Substack, which has my top 100 books. So I recommend just joining the Nick's Present Value. And when you do sign up, you will get access to my book list. Um, let's see. What is the gender ratio of my audience? It's somewhere between 80 to 87% men. I mean, we do have women viewers, but they are in the minority. And given YouTube, that's actually fairly gender balanced for YouTube standards. Um, let's see. So, what keeps you in California? It's always hard to run a business and how overly taxed everything is. You feel the good outweighs the bad. I have a lot of reasons to be in California, and they're not really business related, though. Like, I mean, there are some business related. Like, I've built a community here, I have a network here, like, and there is a lot of entrepreneurs here, and so like, and it's a culture is very friendly to startups and like not necessarily the government culture, but like the boots on the ground type culture, and yeah, and so that's kind of my take on that. But in terms of like also my family is here, my friends are here, my business partners are all here. I like the weather here. I like the lifestyle here, and like I think eventually the cost of living of every city that's big enough to have a Major League Baseball team is going to come closer to parity just because of work remote and states and businesses competing for talent on a more national level now. So I don't think it's worth moving. If I'm going to leave, I'm probably going to leave the United States versus leaving to another state, to be quite honest. And also, not all California is the same. Where I live in Orange County and San Diego are far nicer than the rest of the state, in my opinion, in terms of livability. So that is influenced too. But yeah, in general, I a lot of personal reasons that are keeping me here, and I don't really see that changing for the foreseeable future. Um, yeah. Um, what do you think about UBI and where you have to spend the money at the end of each month? It goes back to the economy. I'm not a fan of UBI personally, and I will probably do a video in the future on why. But in general, it's not really a good idea to give people the ability to vote for their paycheck. Um, that's that's a problem. That's and also it doesn't solve like the envy problem or who gets to live in Newport Beach or in the nice condos in Manhattan or like that UBI doesn't solve that, and it's inflationary. And every study ABI has that's been done on UBI has shown that's either ineffective or um, was not like statistically significant enough to really make any clear evidence that it works. Did Alt History Hub ever engage with your reaction videos? I've never did a reaction video to Alt History Hub. I think I did one to What If Alt Hist. No, he's never engaged me. That's the answer. Do rich people really travel that much, or is it a middle class thing? Um, I would say rich people do travel more. A lot of them travel probably more for business, but a lot of them they just don't really talk about it really as much. Like I don't think you're going to see rich people advertising their travel on social media because traveling to them isn't that big of a deal. Whereas like going on a vacation once a year is a huge deal to middle class people. Whereas like a wealthier person is just flying out to some random city, they're just going to do it and they're not going to talk about it unless they're asked. That's probably the big difference. Um, let's it was traveling in the past mostly a wealthy luxury. Yeah, pre the before like the 1990s, it was like an upper middle class and above thing to travel internationally. Um, like as recently as like the 60s and 70s, most Americans have not even left like their home state, or if they live in a state like or place like New York, like the broader metro area, um, because of just travel costs were prohibitive. And the democratization of travel with affordable air travel has made it more accessible to people. And so, yeah, our first class seats usually paid for by a passenger employer. They're sometimes paid with credit card points too, or rewards points for like frequent flyers. Some business owners will buy it for themselves too. There are certain people, especially if you're older and you are taller than average, like you're going to probably prefer to go in first class because flying is uncomfortable. And as you get old, it probably gets more uncomfortable. So travel, like if you're gonna do the really long, like cross the ocean travel, I recommend doing it before you're 50, because it like the pain and all that stuff is probably gonna make it harder. I mean, like I even in my 30s, I'm starting to feel a little bit more exhausted when I travel. I can't imagine when I'm much older. I probably want to fly first class if I'm going across an ocean. I think domestic flights, nobody cares if you're flying first class or coach. They're too short to really notice. But for the long haul, having that seat, whether in business class or first class, can fold completely down so you can sleep is such a lifesaver. I did one flight with that because I was able to upgrade my flight with miles. And it was one of the most pleasant flight experiences I want. I fell asleep in the US. I woke up in my on the other continent. Flight was a breeze, just like a night's sleep. And I would love to do that more for international travel, but I think I would probably just do it the business class. Um, yeah. Did anything surprise you when researching the Big Beautiful Bill video? Yeah, the Trump accounts. I didn't really expect that, and like, That was kind of a surprise. And the college thing too, the fact they were going to put caps on student loans. I wasn't really expecting that either. And also, it wasn't like the media portrays it as this giant like tax cut for the rich, whereas only really the gains the quote unquote wealthy upper class, upper income people had was just the extension of previous ones. It was very targeted more to working class people. And so like that was also kind of like surprising because like the narrative surrounding it was very different than what was actually written in the legislation. Um, yeah, let's see. Um, do you think there'll be an increase in the manufacturing sector in terms of new corporations or tariffs consolidated with big players? Well, I think there will be new manufacturing. I think manufacturing output's going to go way up because of all this onshoring, tariffs or not. I think the thing, and also automation makes the labor cost, which is the reason why people move their factories overseas, less of a factor. And so, um, in general, I think that the thing that's not going to come back are um, high paying but low skilled manufacturing jobs. You'll have high paying, high skilled manufacturing jobs. People have to repair the robots and develop all the software to automate the factory and stuff like that, and maintaining all these advanced machinery. Those will be new higher skill jobs, but like low skill, high paying jobs like the glorified union jobs at the car plant in Detroit, those are not coming back at all. Um, Next question. Do you like traveling to resorts or major cities? I like both, but it depends on the place I'm going to, really. I like to have one of each ideally for a vacation. City vacations, I prefer them to be shorter because I try to do a lot and then I exhaust myself. And it's not really relaxing. It's more kind of just to experience the culture and see a new place. I like novelty. I like going to new places when I travel and just like soaking in like a new culture and seeing like things I've read about or been curious about in real life. Um, and doing new activities I can't do at home. And one of the things I can't do at home living in California is swimming in tropical oceans, which is why I really enjoy resorts. So if I had to choose one or the other, I would pick the resorts, but I do like both. Uh, and resorts are more like a real relaxing vacation. I'm not somebody who's just going to sit on the beach, though. I like to swim in the ocean or the pool or play sports or play golf when I go on a resort vacation. I've never really understand people who can just sit on the sand and tan all day. I would just drive myself crazy, especially if I'm not sitting next to anybody to socialize with. Um, yeah, most hotels are catering business travel and pushing out family travel. How do you think this will affect the market? Um, I think that's true for like big city hotels that are popular for business travel, but resorts are still catering towards family travel, uh, and particularly timeshares. Like all that business is basically shifted to like timeshare. So basically from Marriott to Marriott Vacation Club. And then Airbnbs and renting homes for bigger families is picking up the slack, as well as the commenter saying. So that's kind of where I think also hotels, a lot of luxury hotels are pushing like couples and single people because birth rates are down, having a family is more expensive, and young families, it's just not as enjoyable or affordable to travel. Like my family didn't really take me much on trips before I was 5 years old, and I really don't blame them. Same with my siblings because you're not going to remember anything before you're five anyway. So what's the point of taking a sub 5 year old kid on a vacation? They're really not. They're not going to know the difference between that and having them being watched by the grandkids or by your aunt or by your sister or brother. And yeah, once they're old enough to remember things like 5 plus, I'm all for taking kids on vacations. It's really good experiences for them. But if they're not going to remember it, you're wasting the not just the money, but also like the headache and stress of logistics of carrying around a bunch of kids for long haul travel. Um, yeah, but let's see. Aisle or window seat, no one likes the middle. If it's a short flight, like I like the aisle seat so I can stretch my legs a little more, and I don't have to and I don't have to worry about I can get something out of my um, bag in the overhead compartment if needed. Longer haul, I like the window because I don't really like being annoyed by people who have to get up into the bathroom and have to go through me there and back. And if you're trying to sleep on the plane, which I'm never really able to do, um, but whenever it's easier to try to sleep if you can lean against the edge of the plane on the window seat than if you're in the aisle. Um, do you think we'll see automated planes in the future? I mean, eventually. It's just probably gonna be longer than we expect because that's more of a trust issue. Like the technology there to do it is probably pretty close. Like the pilots are mainly needed for takeoff and landing. A lot of it is automated, like when you're actually in the air. The problem is that people don't won't feel safe going in an automated plane. They'll want somebody there in case of an emergency or there's some sort of misfunction. So like that's why I don't think you'll ever see automated planes. Like if like a bus is automated or a train, it can stop if something happens and people can walk out. Whereas with a plane, if something happens, it's game over. Like, yeah, that's what makes the difference. And that's why I think it's going to be a lot more difficult to remove pilots than like bus drivers or truck drivers or train drivers. Um, yeah, so that's kind of my take on that. Have you ever gotten bored on halfway through a vacation and wanted to get back quickly? I noticed you get travel fatigue at times. Yeah, if it's a bad place. Like there are certain places that I went on vacation, including the worst vacation in my life, which was Lake Powell, which is if you're familiar with it's on the lake on the border of Arizona and Utah where people like to go on houseboats. And I hated everything about that place. The water was too cold to swim, but it was 100 degrees outside Fahrenheit, so you were never comfortable. And it just was not a pleasant experience, really, the entire trip for a variety of reasons that I'm not going to go into for privacy purposes of the people involved. But yeah, even if I went on my own and with a whole, it would still be awful. I think that was my single worst vacation place. I'm not a big fan of the whole houseboating thing. Uh, then I would, and there was another place I didn't particularly like, and that was the Florida Panhandle. Um, that was another one I wanted to go home early. I just didn't really enjoy going there um, for a variety of reasons. If you want to know more about that, feel free to. I'll talk about it in a meetup, but I'm not going to talk about that on YouTube. But yeah, so those are probably the two vacations I've went on that I've wanted to go home early. India, I mean, I I went not halfway through, but maybe about 80% through. I was tired of like getting like um upset stomach from eating local food there, and I was ready to go home, but it was a good experience. I learned a lot from my trip there, especially about like myself and my faith and other things like that. But yeah, I mean, there's sometimes it's usually not halfway through. It's usually like 60 to 75% through. Um, but yeah, those are kind of the places that I've wanted to go home early. Or if I'm around people who I didn't really want to be on the trip with, but that doesn't really happen to me. Um, yeah. What do you like about traveling? Culture, isn't it? I like to have new experiences that I cannot do at home and just curiosity. I like geography. And I usually like to travel with either like my family or close friends. And I mean, I sometimes will travel alone. I did in my 20s just because, um, yeah. Um, so like that's kind of my experience with that. But Yeah, I do. I just I like I'm on it. I want to see the world. I mean, I live in a very nice place, and kind of the lesson I learned is I'm very fortunate where I do live and where I grew up. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't go and see everything else. I would have this perpetual curiosity, like that's even the places I didn't like that much that I traveled, with the exception of Lake Powell. I not regret going to any of them because it quenched my curiosity about the place. And so, yeah. Do you enjoy historical sites? Yeah, I do. I'm really into history, particularly pre-World War One history. And so when I can go see um, historical sites, I try to, especially if it's something that I think is relevant and interesting. And I look up when I travel, like what are the notable historical sites and if they're worth going to or not. Um, what made you to let's see. Do you plan on have an itinerary when you travel, or else can you get overwhelmed without a plan? I generally like having a plan, whether travel or my day to day life, because if I don't, I end up wasting a bunch of time just lounging around if I not have something to do. I usually try to leave plans open, and if I'm traveling with like other people, I try to block off some time for they can do the activities they want, I can do the activities I want, so that people don't feel like that I'm excluding what their input from plans. But generally, yeah, I like to have a general plan, or like, but I don't really like to have set times for everything. Be like hour by hour, like it's a work day. I'll be like, look, I have 7 days on this trip. I'm at these places and these times. I want to make sure I go to X, Y, and Z place on each day, and I can leisure and do it at a leisurely pace. And I want some time in the middle of the day to rest or relax in between and not just be rushed through it. Unless if like I'm on a road trip and you kind of have to be because you can't really backtrack. Then I'm a lot more structured when I do road trips. Um, let's see. What are your thoughts on going to Portugal, the Azores and the Madeiras? I'd love to go. Like I'm 25% Portuguese descent, and my Portuguese ancestors particularly are from Azores and Madeira. So I'd like to see my family history out there. I've heard the Azores are the best place to go fishing in the world. I was planning on going there in 2020, but the trip got canceled due to the pandemic. And so I've been to Lisbon, but I haven't been to the islands, which was my main place I wanted to go to in Portugal. So yeah, it's close to the top of my list of places to go when time permits. Um, yeah, usually if you want to deal with foreign currency, you either pay for things with a credit card that has no currency exchange fees, or you have a special debit. Certain banks, particularly online banks, have debit cards that you can withdraw from ATMs without foreign currency or ATM fee, and do it that way. If for places that you need cash, that's how you go about that. Thoughts on San Antonio? I've only been to San Antonio once. It's like it's worth checking out. The Grand Hyatt, when I stayed there back in the day, had the nicest hotel gym I've ever been to at the time. It was like a whole Equinox type thing with its own floor. I remembered that. The Alamo was cool to see. The Riverwalk was nice. I think the Tex-Mex was a little overrated, but it's worth like a day or two. You do it as a joint trip with Austin and call it a little mini vacation. That's what I did. I did half the time I was there in Austin, half the time I was there in San Antonio, and it was a nice little long weekend trip. So yeah, it's worth visiting. Um, how about Madagascar? Unique animals. I've never been to Madagascar, but I've heard they like to move it. The lemurs down there. Um, if you get that reference, but yeah, I'd like to possibly check it out one day. Madagascar, like it's has a lot of exotic flora and fauna that you're just not going to find anywhere else. But I don't really know it's enough about it really to say if it's a good vacation destination or not, or their geopolitical situation. So yeah. Do you disconnect from work on travel? If I'm at least either 2 time zones to the west or 4 time zones to the east of California, I can disconnect. If I'm too close, time zone wise, it's gets very hard to disconnect because it's too easy to like be in line with this market trading hours and the just the general business world. Like that's why I like Hawaii, because by the time you wake up at 10 after you have breakfast at 10 a.m., the stock market's closed. So you kind of forced to relax. The whole work week is basically done on the mainland for a lot of people by the time you're just getting started. And then when you're far enough away internationally, it's easy to relax too. Are you afraid to go to some places to travel? Yeah, I would rank travel in like 5 tiers. Like one is like extremely safe. You can go out and walk around at 4 in the morning, no problem. You would be fine having like your daughter or your girlfriend or somebody walk alone there or go alone there. That's level safe one. Level two, generally safe, but just don't want to be out at night or do nightlife stuff. A level three is like you need to have some precautions. It's still probably okay going, but I wouldn't want any women in my life going alone. And you need to be careful what neighborhoods you go in and not go to like certain places, bars alone or stuff like that. Tier four, you need a bodyguard or like a personal friend who knows how to fight to protect you. And tier five is not go at all. So yeah, that is kind of the 5 tiers in terms of like travel safety. And I would easily go to anything in the 1, 2, or 3 category. And then the 4, I would need to basically pay like one of my friends or somebody from Port of Protection. 5, there's a no-go zone. And I'm not going to do a list of certain countries because that would just be too long for a a video like for this live stream, but I might make, I have a second channel called Nick AF, which I haven't done anything with, but I'm thinking about converting it into like Nick's travel reviews and these kind of talks where I talk about like the 5 tiers and maybe do a map of it or my reviews of various cities in America or places I've been to. I don't know. Would you guys like it if I made a second channel where I just talk solely about like travels and my adventures on travels? And I wouldn't really make it like a travel log where I would literally show me going to places like every YouTuber who's got a big enough following is trying to do with their significant other. More just be me telling my stories that I've already been to and traveled. Like I kind of want to keep like my private life on my vacations private, but I do want to like share some interesting stories that come along. So yeah, I'm thinking about that's what if I'm going to make Nick AF into something, that's what it will be because I like finance is my main interest, my professional interest. But outside of that, one of my next favorite things that interest is geography, history, and travel related stuff. I find those all really interesting. Um, yeah, I do have some scary stories, but again, I might have to save that for Nick AF. Is this channel a net plus or minus for advisory form? I think it's a net plus, definitely. Um, yeah. Let's see. Be the less annoying Rick Steves. Yeah, Rick Steves only does Europe, so he's really missing out on a lot of the world. And yeah, that's probably close to the bottom of the dollar when Rick Steves is complaining about USD policy. It's probably a good contraindicator. Do you like San Diego in terms of cost of living, jobs, education? Yeah, I do like San Diego. It's a great city. Like if you're a more ambitious person in the business world, it might not be the best place to be because if you're not working in biotech or defense, the jobs just aren't there or the connections are not there. So that's really kind of the main problem with San Diego. It's kind of more of a place once you've already made your money to be more laid back, but it's kind of hard to build a career. Favorite West Side city in Los Angeles? Um, I'd have to go with Santa Monica because my brother and sister live there, and it's got a relatively better parking situation than a lot of the other ones. It's got the beach is pretty nice there. it's gone a little bit down in quality in terms of like public safety, um, what than it was in the past. But yeah, I would still probably say um, Santa Monica is my choice there. Um, and thanks for the compliment in the second super chat. Um, let's see. Yeah. So next question. Yeah, I'm gonna do. I can already do a lot of things about other countries. I have a playlist called "Economic Futures" where I break down like the modern economic history of a country, and based off of that, what I expect their economic future to be. And I've done several of those videos. I did those before I did a lot of the old money videos, and I really enjoyed making those because it kind of intersected my interests in travel and international cultures and finance. Um, I'm going to make more of those this year. I'm going to do one about the economic futures of Italy, Switzerland, Netherlands, and probably Barbados as well. Um, like as and to add to the economic futures series. But I've already done in terms of economic futures videos, already 50 videos on that category, and I'm going to do ones about not just countries, but like U.S. states and metropolitan areas. I already did California and Hawaii, and I'll probably do something similar with other other like states and cities in the mainland of the United States. So yeah, here's the playlist to economic futures if you're curious about that. Why do you think so many Catholic universities are Catholic in name only? Yeah, it's a real issue. It's the same secularizing like force that shifts a lot of other cultural institutions to the left. And there's also some influence with the Jesuits and their kind of theology that has some sort of influence on it too. But it's generally that's the same kind of liberalizing forces that have affected other institutions in America. Um, let's see. Could you do something on the Kenyan Revolution microfinance? I might do something on microfinance in general, but I don't think it would be that interesting of a video. It's just basically people using apps to have very small loans to finance inventory for like micro scale, like retail and other very small level business activity. I mean, it's a nice thing that could help people climb up with their bootstraps, but I don't think there's enough there for a video, to be quite frank. Um, yeah, that's my thoughts on microfinance. I think it's a good thing for society, but I don't think it's particularly interesting beyond that. What do you think about the national parks and which ones have you been to? The national parks are great. Some obviously are worth visiting more than others, but like they're in general, America has a lot of great national parks. Like I'm not really interested in camping, so like I need at least like a basic lodge to sleep in, or I'm not going to enjoy my trip to a national park. Um, yeah, but as long as, but there's still nonetheless, even if you don't like to camp, there are plenty of great national parks to go to. Like the ones I have been to are Yosemite, Yellowstone, which was probably my favorite national park. The Grand Tetons, I went there. Petrified Forest, Grand Canyon. The next time I want to go to the Grand Canyon is when I'm in better shape to do it. I'd like to go hike up and down the rim to rim in one day. I had friends and family members who were able to do it. I got about 70% down before I turned back up because I knew I'd be at risk of not getting back up in the same day if I went any further. But it's it's something on my list to go back and do. And then I've been to Zion and Bryce Canyon in Utah and Mammoth Caves in Kentucky. So, and then Mauna Kea in Hawaii, Volcanoes National Park, which was a cool experience being able to drive inside like the crater and all that. But yeah, I think the national parks are cool, and most of them are worth visiting. You ever been to a place as soon as you got there regretted it? I mean, I could say that for like restaurants, or like maybe specific activities, but I don't know about a place. Like I'm trying to think of like because the trips that I didn't really particularly enjoy, um, those are mainly due to like those weren't usually my choice. Usually a family member picked that place and I just kind of tagging along. So I'm trying to think of a place that I went that I was expecting to be really cool that wasn't. Um, I'm kind of having a hard time. Really, there's one that was places that were not as fun as expected, like, but they still were. I still don't really regret going. Like Rimini, it's a nice beach town, on the Adriatic Sea, but I don't know. I guess I had higher expectations for it than it actually was, but I still enjoyed going to Rimini. Um, I'm, I mean, yeah, like I don't know. I mean, Venice is a similar thing. I really liked Venice, but it, my expectations were probably too high for it when I went. It's a little overcrowded as well, and this was even back when I went, which was over a decade ago. But yeah, I don't really think there's any place that I actually absolutely regretted that I went voluntarily, or I mean not voluntarily, but I didn't go because of another person's priorities. Most underrated client pipeline for wealth advisors. Um, yeah, I would just say community involvement. Um, do you think traveling with a girl you're not married to, um, a girl not married young, is a good idea? So you're saying you're traveling with your girlfriend before you marry her? Is that your question? Like, I think that's actually a really good idea because it's a good way to test your compatibility. Like, you go on like a vacation. I mean, I'm not like it's better than moving in. I would say, um, something bad is going to happen. Try someone you just met. No, that's not a good idea. Maybe you meet somebody who happens to live there. That might not be, or if they're going on their own with their friends and you just happen to meet up. But I don't think you should be doing like a one-on-one vacation with some random date that you don't know very well. That's yeah. Like they got to be at least a serious girlfriend. That's kind of my take on that. Um, let's see. Thoughts on Seattle. Visited last week and it's better than my hometown, Denver. Well, I do agree. I like Seattle better than Denver, personally. And speaking of Seattle, we're actually going to be in Seattle on Friday for the Analyzing Finance with Nick tour. So if you want to come see me in person, want to go back to the Emerald City, I will be there. It's going to be a fun time. We got a really cool venue by Pike's Place called Sonia's, where we're having the event, and I'm having an interesting speech about what's that's social class related. And I'm not going to spoil the topic, but yeah, Seattle's fun. I recommend if you have the money to do it, to do the hot tub boat in Lake Union. It's pretty cool. Space Needle is fun. Um, it's a very walkable city if it's not raining, and Pike's Place is cool. And University of Washington in the spring has like the cherry blossoms, which are nice to look at. Um, yeah, if you get the weather right, it's a fun place for a weekend. I don't know if I would live there, but it's a good place to visit. That's my take on Seattle. Um, have you been to Niagara Falls? Thoughts on the US side? I have been to Niagara Falls, and it's nice. I only went to the US side. I've heard the Canadian side has a better view, but just given like if it was part of like a road trip on the way to Toronto, I just didn't really have the time to go to the Canadian side, and it was already kind of getting dark before I got to the border crossing. So I wanted to see it when it was still sunny out. But yeah, it's nice. It's worth checking out. Um, I think it's also where my grandparents had their first romantic vacation was to Niagara Falls. So yeah, so there's some family history involved with that one too. Um, but yeah, I would go to Niagara Falls. It's worth it. But I'd kind of do it maybe as a joint trip with like going to Toronto or something. Um, I don't know if it's worth going to or maybe mixing it, doing like a mini like road trip. You start like in New York or Philadelphia, then go to New York City, the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, Buffalo, and then Toronto, and maybe up to Montreal. Then I don't know, make that some a loop somehow. I think that would be um, a good fun kind of road trip type of place. Um, yeah, but in general, I think there's a lot of cool places for road trips in America. Like I think the deep south is a good place for a road trip. The Mountain West states, basically going from like Southern California, wherever you live on the West Coast, and then goes to um, Park City, Utah, Jackson Hole, someplace in Idaho in between, um, and then Yellowstone, Bozeman, Mount Rushmore, Denver, Santa Fe, and the Grand Canyon, and do that circle. Whether you live in Vegas or LA or San Diego, that could be your start point. But that it's a fun Eastern Canada, like going from Montreal to Quebec City to Halifax and Prince Edward Island and all that. I think would be a great like road trip. That I think the UK outside of London, just going around the English and Scottish countryside and Welsh countryside would be a fun one. And New Zealand on a camper van is kind of like the other like road trip type thing that I'd like to do that I haven't done. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of my. And then if you're not from California, the coastal California road trip is not a terrible idea. But I wouldn't recommend taking the one the whole way because it just takes too long, to be quite honest. And there's a landslide blocking it, the path between San Simeon and Big Sur half the time anyway. So I don't recommend doing the one just because it's just too slow a lot of the time. There's usually road blockages. Um, yeah, I think America needs more relaxed laws when it comes to international tourists. In what way? I mean, I generally think that America's laws for tourism work pretty well. Like, you need to have some sort of deterrence for people who are high risk of overstaying. Yet at the same time, you don't want to discourage tourism. It's a fine balance. Um, and I'm not really the one to know what that balance is. Yeah, it depends where the visas are and what ways you can assess overstay risk. Like, because that's a real problem. What do you use to compare the wealth of two countries? GDP per capita nominal is what I generally use. I know it's not perfect because there is different purchasing power parity levels, but the problem with using purchasing power parity is that number is often manipulated and politicized. So you don't know what the right multiplier is. And different countries use different ones. And like, yeah, I've been to countries who claim that their PPP is like half that of like the Midwest of the United States. And it's just not true when you actually go there on foot. So if I knew what the PPP multiples were like intrinsically in my head, I would just I would build in my own multiples. But like, I'm not, my intuition is not strong enough. I don't know. I'm not an econometrician. So like, I don't know what the right PPP level is. I just don't trust the ones that a lot of national governments use as their PPPs for the purchasing power parity multiple. Let's see. I think I am. Do you? How do you determine good food to eat when you're traveling? In the U.S., I use Yelp. Like, that's kind of my proxy. If I know people who live in that city who have been there, I'll ask them personally for recommendations as well, and then maybe verify it with Yelp. Um, and that works well for Canada too. For outside of the US and Canada, it's a little bit harder. You're going to need to just get referrals and whether it's recommendation for you or the hotel you're staying at, or people you've been there, or just feeling the vibe of a place by walking around. Sometimes you just want to go. Also, if you're like walking around a lot in a big city overseas, and maybe you're just getting hungry at the point, and you stumble upon this certain area of restaurants, and you just pick whatever one you think is the best in that area. But yeah, it's really difficult, to be quite honest. And I've had a lot of hits and misses. Sometimes I've had really good food when I've traveled overseas, and other times I've had terrible. Signs of a tourist trap. Um, there's a few of them. One, they use a microwave for their cooking. That happened to me once when I went to Milan, and I was super hungry and I wanted to eat something near the downtown. There weren't really any great restaurants there. And so I went to this random Italian place with my cousin, and I literally saw that I ordered like a carbonara, and I literally just saw them put like some carbonara like in the fridge in the microwave and serve it to me. And I was like, and it wasn't that good. And I was like, I can't believe I'm paying restaurant prices for somebody microwaving my food. I don't know the name of the restaurant. So like, but that was probably one experience. Yeah. Should I call the microwave chef Mike? That's hilarious. But yeah, that's like sign of a tourist trap too, is like there's a lot of chains that are tourist traps, like Bubba Gump, Ripley's Believe It or Not. Like there's a few. It was average, the pasta. Like it's better than if somebody did that in America. Let's just say that. But I wouldn't go back to that place, especially in Italy. Italy's the number one country for food. There's so many good options, so you don't want to waste it at a place like that. Um, do you buy insurance when you travel, like flight insurance? Generally not. And then also there's certain neighborhoods that have reputations of being tourist traps. So if you go to that neighborhood, you probably guaranteed everything. Um, it's guaranteed that it's a tourist trap. Like Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco is a good example of this. Um, or Times Square, New York. Like there are certain places that you just kind of know what you're getting into. And sometimes you just gotta embrace the tourist trap tackiness of it. Some like and you because you are a tourist. So like sometimes it makes sense to indulge yourself in touristy activities. But you could tell it's just like kind of like the highway road signs that are like a certain way, or that they spend a disproportionate amount advertising more than like the actual like quality of the experience. Uh, and if they're near a lot of major attractions that doesn't have a large residential community, those neighborhoods are usually tourist traps, and that applies to most of the world. Um, so, yeah, that's kind of what I would say signs of a tourist trap. And also, what is Instagram popular? Like, if you want to like have a good travel experience or find off the beaten path places nowadays, look for places that don't have very many Instagram worthy sites, but still have cool experiences. Like Uruguay is another good example of it. They have one statue of like this hand coming out of the sand, but there's not that many Instagram worthy sites there. And so it's not popular among the crowd who just travels just to have their pictures and post it on social media. So if they don't really have anything that's popular among the Instagram crowd, you can get probably a better experience, or at least a more authentic one, because those people just aren't going to want to go there. And I live in a place that's popular with Instagram people. In the summer, I literally see people standing on the road, middle of the road when I'm trying to drive, taking pictures in front of their parked car for Instagram, or taking them on the stairs on the way to the beach or whatever. And it's quite frankly annoying. And there are certain places like here in California that are very popular with that kind of thing, and it kind of kills the experience. Is Hawaii worth going? Definitely. I love Hawaii. It's my favorite travel destination for vacation in the United States. I've never been to Finger Lakes or Saratoga Springs or the Catskills, so no, I have no insight on that. Did you ever go to Burning Man? No, it's not my vibe. I'm as simple as that. Like, it's kind of a good filter question, or like is asking people their thoughts on Burning Man. You learn a lot about somebody's personality that way. But yeah, If you couldn't live in the US, where would you live? I'd probably live in Switzerland, Lugano, Switzerland specifically. Other places I would consider would be like Grand Cayman, maybe Punta del Este, possibly Singapore, but like Switzerland would probably be the top. Have you ever been to Gstaad? No, I have never been to Gstaad. Um, I mean, I've never really been to Switzerland in the winter time, so that's kind of yeah. There's just a certain personality type, Mark, who likes Burning Man, and there's a certain personality type that doesn't, and they have certain hobbies and interests that are more predisposed to. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Um, yeah, I'm probably going to do this for another 20 minutes. So if you want to get your question in, get them in now because I'm going to wrap this up in about 20 minutes. Would you party with Besant in the Bahamas? Was Scott Besant known for going to the Bahamas? But I mean, yeah, I mean, I'd like to go to the Bahamas, but I think I'm gonna wait there until go there until I have children, possibly. Unless if I have enough of you guys on YouTube who want me to host a meetup there. Like if I have enough people vote for Bahamas, I will do it. But I want to go to like the Atlantis and similar um, resorts for that kind of experience. And I think that's probably a good place to take your future family. So that's probably when I would go to the Bahamas. But yeah, it's definitely on my list. I have never been like, and the East Coast people are more likely to go to the Caribbean for their tropical destinations. And people that on the West Coast were more likely to go to Hawaii or the Pacific coast of Mexico. That's kind of how the split goes. Um, yeah, let's see. Have you ever thought about doing a video on Live Nation Ticketmaster? I mean, I think there's plenty of other people who have done a lot of videos on that. Um, I don't really know enough about it, to be quite honest, to make an interesting video. I'm not much of a concert goer. Most of the concerts I've been to in my life are my uncle's concerts, who was a somewhat notable musician. I'm not going to say who he was, but you can look him up on Wikipedia if you're curious. Um, but that's kind of yeah, I don't really have a strong take on that. Any future meetups in the Southeast US? Um, Probably not for a while. I think the Southeast US meetups are probably going to be in Florida and Texas for the foreseeable future and not till 2026. The one I would like to do if I got big enough of an audience for it would be Charleston, South Carolina. And that would be a fun one. I really liked when I visited there last time. And I will be doing one in DC eventually, but I don't really count that as the Southeastern United States. Um, yeah. The Sedona, Arizona, worth it from LA. Not by itself, but it's worth it if you do it like a road trip. Like you go to Scottsdale, Sedona, maybe go to Bryce Canyon and Vegas and kind of do a loop. Then it could be worth it. But I wouldn't just go to Sedona, honestly. Some nice rocks and there's some really nice resorts there. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it. But in general, like the Southeast is where I have the lowest percentage of my audience relative to its percentage of the population in America. How far do you swim out when you go swimming at beaches? Depends on how warm the water is. When it's cold, I don't like to swim that much. But assuming it's warm enough that I like to swim, I will swim like at least to like if they have the buoys as the border of the swim zone, I usually swim at least that far. And if I'm not worried about boats coming around or like a dangerous current, I'll maybe even go farther than that and swim along the shore. Like I'm more likely to swim parallel to the shore than swim super far out deep because I don't want to get tossed away in a rip current and not be able to get back in, or get risk dealing with boats. But like I've swam long ways just going parallel to going out a decent distance where there's not a bunch of people and then just swimming parallel to the shore. Do I wear a wetsuit? Yeah, I do in California when I swim anytime other than July, August, or September or early October. Um, yeah, I almost ran into a shark when I was swimming in a tropical island. Um, yeah, that's that. I did run into a shark actually, and I swam as fast as I could to get away from it. And yeah, it was freaky. Like that was the closest I've ever had to deal with like a shark attack. And I did try scuba. Um, it wasn't my cup of tea, personally. I just the horror stories of like people's lungs blowing up for going too fast and nitrogen narcosis and all these weird existential risks aren't really worth the brief thrill of being able to be underwater a little longer. I did it in Hawaii as part of like I did like a scuba certification class and I got to go swim under the coral reefs and stuff and I had fun, but I think I'm retired from scuba at this point. I think snorkeling is just sufficient for me, or maybe doing a little bit of free diving. Um, any historical, um, any historical landmarks you'd recommend traveling to at some point in your life? Oh, there's a lot of them. St. Peter's Basilica is worth going. It's probably the most beautiful building I've ever seen. Taj Mahal, if you go to India, it's probably the second most impressive building I've ever seen. Um, those are worth seeing. Um, I would say, like, I think the architecture, some of the history in DC, all the monuments are worth going to, like the Jefferson Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Memorial Monument, all the Smithsonian museums. So like DC, like a memorial site. Um, yeah, those would be the top three. I'd say DC, Taj Mahal, and St. Peter's Basilica. Um, and then the British Museum, but I don't know if that's really a historical landmark, but that's my favorite museum in the world in London. Um, let's see. What is your travel bucket list top five? Um, yeah, it says this has changed recently due to certain geopolitical events that made places that would previously be on this list have to move down the rankings a little bit. Um, so yeah, um, that's kind of my so like I would say now my top five would be um, let's think about this actually. I don't know the order, but these are the top five: Australia, New Zealand, um, Zanzibar, just slash Tanzania. Uh, I'd say then the Bahamas and Brazil would probably be my top five as of now. And I'd put Egypt. Actually, I'd swap um, Brazil for Egypt, and that would be my top five actually at the current moment. Others that are kind of honorable mentions would be like Brazil, Peru, Poland. Um, yeah, uh, that's those and French Polynesia would be like particularly Bora Bora and like the Seychelles. But yeah, those are kind of the contenders right now. What are your updated thoughts on San Francisco? I watched prior comparison to Detroit. Do you feel the travel value still holds its prior prestige as an ultra high networking mecca? I noticed when I visited there recently, most of the tourists are now Europeans or outside of America versus Americans visiting there, which I thought was rather noteworthy. I think that the recall of Chesa Boudin is going to help with the public safety thing, and it seems like they're willing to be more aggressive on law enforcement. And the recent voting patterns have shown like some kind of moderation to a lot of the political craziness of San Francisco, especially in terms of public safety. Um, and so that is kind of my take on San Francisco. I still think a lot of the forces in those video in terms of like software workers moving elsewhere due to costs and AI requiring less workers in general is means that and then just the overall high cost of living being a similar barrier to like union labor was to Michigan are still real concerns. And so I think the structural issues are still there for like the economy and living there. But yeah, I think it'll still be a great tourist city. and it's actually one of the most scenic cities in America, and it's great for walking, and it's great to take like a romantic partner for a weekend there. But living there is a different story. What's my sleep schedule? Like I try to target like 10:30 to 6:30 to or 11:30 to 7:30. Like I don't want to like or on weekends maybe midnight to 8, but like yeah, I don't go to bed super early, but I also don't like to stay up super late either. Um, yeah, I've never been to Machu Picchu, so that's why I didn't mention it in the historical sites, but I would like to see it. Is sleep non-negotiable for you? Yeah. But a lot of people get cranky when they eat, that they call it hangry. I'm that way with lack of sleep. Like if you don't let me go to sleep when I want to go to sleep and try to force me to stay up by keeping the light on or keeping the noise on, I get in a very bad mood really quickly. So yeah, that it is definitely a non-negotiable for me. I don't know how like people like President Trump and some of these like 5 a.m. club people can live on like 4 hours of sleep. I can't. I need my rest. And when I don't get it, I actually my productivity just drops like a stone. And even if I'm there in the office, I'm not really doing much. Do you have a bias for Africa due to negative news? No. I mean, the reason why I have Africa and a lot of the places I are in my remaining list is because I haven't been to much of the southern hemisphere. Like most of the remaining travel destinations I have are in the global south, whether South America, Africa, or Oceania. Um, yeah. So, do you think Elon's new political party will have any impact on election? I don't think it's going to gain much traction, but if it does, it's going to hurt the Republicans. Um, and yeah, when I do try, and I generally sleep less on the weekdays, and on the weekends, I kind of use slightly to catch up. Um, but yeah, do you get insurance when in case you're sick or hurt when traveling? Not now, but once I'm past a certain age, probably like over 50, I will. Because like I think that a lot of it is covered like through like cross things with your health insurance, but I haven't really checked to look into it. And I'm not doing crazy extreme sports most of the time when I'm traveling. But if I was to do that, or if I was over a certain age, yeah, I think I would do it. But I'm best months to travel. Depends where you're going. Like every place has a good best time of the year that's different. And like if you probably noticed with the analyzing finance with Nick tour, I generally pick the best weather place time to go to all the places I went to. Um, so like I went to Arizona and Florida in the winter. I did the California ones here in the summer, and the Midwest and the Northeast in the spring. Like I that wasn't unintentional. Let's just say that. Do you think that geography of wealth vid could be done for Africa, or is it too unestablished? Yeah, it's too unestablished. Like there isn't really like geography of wealth video. I can't even do it for like Australia or and a lot of Asia. Like it's not just the fact that it's unestablished, it's the fact that there's not that much generational wealth yet. The money that's made there is relatively new, and a lot of the neighborhoods and even vacation destinations aren't really class segregated as much as they are in North America and Europe. So yeah, I don't think Africa is at the level that it'd be ready for. And also, even if it was, I don't know enough about it to like that's why I haven't done one about the Southeast. Like there's plenty of old and new money enclaves in southeastern cities, but I don't have enough experience traveling in the Southeast or living in the Southeast to provide any insight that's different than you would find like running it on an AI or Google searching it or looking at Zillow home prices. And I try to provide my own unique insight. Um, yeah. Why is Africa so far behind in economic development? That's a longer video for another time. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but I don't think I'm gonna have time to get into it now before I log off. Curious what your thoughts are going on with Brazil and the US. Like what particularly? Is it the travel visa thing or is there something else? Like I haven't been following it that closely. Um, Are the major cities really that bad? Like big cities, you avoid certain spots. Okay, like major cities where? Are you talking about the United States, um, Europe, Asia? Like it's very different. Um, like I mean, I think, and even in the U.S., there's some cities that are perfectly fine to go to, like, and others you need to watch your back no matter what neighborhood you're in. So there's a lot of variance there. But yeah, the cities that are bad really are that bad. But there's a lot of cities that are exaggerated for being worse than they actually are too. Have you gone to many baseball games this summer? I've only gone to one. I went to the Cincinnati Reds game against the Padres in Cincinnati right before I did the meetup there. And I try to go to one game a season for baseball. Usually it's an Angels game because that's my favorite team and that's where I live. But when I travel, particularly to some of these um, middle America cities, I like to go to local sporting events. And so, and baseball is in the summer. So if there is a Major League Baseball team I haven't been to on my path, I try to go to a game. And yeah, Ellie De La Cruz, fun player to watch. Like the highlights of him stealing 3 bases in one play, first to home, was one of the better baseball highlights I've ever seen. Um, do you think Europe good, America bad mentality kind of dies out as the economic disparity between us grows more and more? Yeah, but I think a lot of that is outdated. It's based on this idea of like Europe is the way it was 30 or 40 years ago, not the Europe of now. And or even older than that, like pre-World War II Europe, a lot of people, because a lot of Americans are descendants of people who moved from Europe pre-World War II, and so they kind of hold this soft spot for a halcyon day of Europe that is no longer really there, to be quite honest. So um, that's kind of my take on that. And it's actually causing the Europe better America people to harden even more. They'll just say, oh, the culture is better. America just prioritizes greed and making money. They don't have culture. They don't know how to relax. They don't know how to enjoy quality of life. So I don't think the widening economic disparity is really going to change it unless if Europe goes completely third world, which I just, for all of Europe's problems, I just don't see it going there. Um, let's see. Why economics of travel that involves baptizing your child? What, are you going to have a destination baptism? I've heard of destination weddings. I only time I've heard of destination baptism is when, like, say you want two cousins to get baptized in the same church together. I know relatives who've done that, but like they'll pick the city that one of the cousins lives in, but that doesn't. I don't really call that destination baptism. That's a new that's a new concept. Who knows? Um, yeah, I'm gonna drink some water and then get back to some of these questions. How do you generally judge the economic condition of a country when you visit? First, I look at the wealthy neighborhoods and how much like visible armed security there is. Usually, the more amount of that, it probably means it's a higher crime, under relatively um, a bad sign for development. So um, that's kind of a sign. Another sign is really kind of just how cheap the labor is. Really, is a general like sign for economic development, or like like or whether how like then and also another various thing like also like purchasing power parity, like how far your money goes is a good sign. And like the level and how like whether people obey like traffic laws or have organized queues or things like that. And like the condition of property, like how well maintained are the buildings. That's probably the best thing actually to see. Like if you have a more better maintained stuff, it's probably more economically developed, especially outside of like urban cores that are designed to impress the international community. But it's not a perfect science. You just kind of an intuition for it, honestly, more than anything. Um, top religious tourism sites on your bucket list. Well, yeah, there's a lot of those. I mean, the only real pilgrimage place that I have been to is Rome. So, and I'm gonna check. I've been to Rome just generally, and I'm gonna check off Jubilee Rome this year. So, other religious tourism sites. I'd like to. The Camino would be interesting in Spain. Israel, like the whole country as a treasure trove of historical sites. So, I'd say like all the historical, like all the places where Christ walked in Israel would probably be up there for me. Um, I've had a chance to go there yet. Let's see. And yeah, and maybe Lourdes in France, but I don't really have a top five. They're only ones I'm not interested in going to, or Rome, the Camino, and Israel. So yeah, are these scheduled or just a spur of the moment thing? I generally scheduled this one, but I pushed this one back a day early because other things in my life kind of got in the way from doing it tomorrow. I try to target doing 1 to 2 live streams a month. Um, I have one themed one and usually like a benchmark. Like if I break a certain amount of subscribers or some other milestone for the channel, I'll do like a Q&A for a live stream. So yeah, and they're generally around this time of the day, like after work hours on a weekday, like a Thursday, Wednesday, or a Thursday or a Friday. I've noticed that's when I get the most engagement for these things, and also when I can fully focus on them. When the markets close, I try to do some in the morning so that like my European audience and like other old world time zone people who have a hard time catching these can sometimes participate. But this time of the day, basically early evening West Coast time, are best for me for live streams. Sometimes I share them in the Substack when I'm going to do them in advance too. I know nothing about the Spanish king hiding assets, so I have nothing to say about that. Um, yeah, let's see. Would you ever go to Mount Athos? Maybe. It's not really on my list. If I got invited, maybe I'd check it out, but it's not yeah, it's not really a priority, to be quite honest. There's too many other places that I'd rather go first. Um, but yeah, I think um, do you look up to any of the Nobel laureates in economics? Maybe. I'm not sure who has the Nobel laureates and who doesn't. So, um, yeah, have you heard about the new taxation laws? Yeah, I talked about that in the OBBBA video I did on Monday. Yeah, it's going to make professional gambling unprofitable. And so basically, I don't think it's going to affect tourism, but it might actually help the casinos because um, they won't be losing to people who have somewhat of an edge against them as much because like even a professional gambler is going to get 53 to 55% of their bets right to make money. And so you need to have them. And with the difference in the tax deductibility, that almost wipes out that little edge that they do have. So I think it's going to have an impact. It's just, it might be actually more of a positive one than a negative one, but it might be a negative. I don't really know how big the professional gambler economy is, though. I'm gonna, and it might encourage those people to move to like day trading or online prediction markets or other things. But yeah, I'm just sending out links if you want to contact me directly with specific questions for calls or consultations. I think I'm starting to get tired, and plus I need to eat dinner. So I'm gonna probably wrap this up here. But thank you guys all for watching. Um, I will probably do another one of these in early August before I do the meat of my travels for the European tour. And thank you guys all for joining, and have a great rest of your evening.